Hey guys, this is Jack with Chicago C4D, and this is the first video in what's going to be a series of tutorials introducing Python in Cinema 4D. And Python is a scripting language that I think was started in the early 90s, and as of release 12, it's been integrated in Cinema 4D. And what I'm hoping to show you here is that it expands what you can do with Cinema. It gives you some amazing new capabilities, and if you've and it's actually very simple. I think if you're used to working visually, it can seem intimidating to get into code, but I'm going to start with the real fundamentals here. And I think that once you get your head around the basics, you'll start to see that you can do some really cool stuff with not too much effort. So I'm just going to jump in and start walking you through some scripts. And the first thing we're going to do is set up our interface for script editing. The first thing we want is the script manager. Oh, by the way, I got this from under the script menu. I'm in release 13. If you're in release 12, this is called the Python menu, but it has the same stuff in it, basically. So the script manager is basically our editor. That's where we're going to write our scripts and execute them. I'm just going to dock that here. And the other piece we need is the console. You can think of the script manager and the console as sort of input and output. The script manager is where you write your code and send instructions to Cinema, and the console is where you get messages from the script while it's running. That's also where you'll see error messages if you're trying to debug your code. You can also see here that I've got V-Ray installed, and it's just sending me a message, basically that it loaded successfully. I'm going to clear out the console by clicking this little X. And you can also see up here, when you open it up, it comes with a sort of default script. And to run a script, you just hit this execute button. Let's execute this one and see what it does. It just gives you a dialog box that says hello world. And this is pretty simple. The convention in programming is your first task is to create something that says hello world. So this is a pretty simple script that handles that, but we're going to start even simpler. We're going to start with a single line to make sure the basics are clear. And so our first script is just going to say print, parentheses, hello world, and that's in quotation marks. And let's see what that script does. Hit execute, and you just get hello world in your console. So what this is doing, what you're looking at is a function call. A function is sort of a bundle of code that gets executed when you tell it to run. And what's nice about it is that you don't have to know what's going on inside. You just have to know what information it wants from you and what it's going to give back. So it's sort of functions are a basic building block of every script. And this is how you call one. And so what it consists of is this first word, print, is the name of the function. So to call a function, you have to identify it by name. Then in parentheses is what you call an argument, which is basically an input, like a piece of information that the script wants from you in order to do its job. And a function can ask for any number of arguments, and it can ask for 0. In this case, print asks for a single argument, and that's a string. A string is a piece of text. That's just the programming term. And you give it a string by putting it inside quotation marks. You can use single or double quotation marks, and it works the same. And as you can see, the arguments are within parentheses. So that's it. That's your first script. And those are and function calls are something you're going to use everywhere in your code. So that's kind of a good place to start. So now we're going to move to a slightly more complex script. And I've actually written these ahead of time just to avoid typing. And they're all saved in my preferences folder. In the blog post, I'll show you where you can find your stored scripts. But once they're there, you just click on this menu and load whatever you want. And by the way, if you're in release 12, you don't have this menu, I don't think. And to access those scripts, you just go to File, Import, and then it'll take you to where they're stored in the Finder. So this script is 4 lines instead of 1, but it's still pretty simple. And let's run it first and see what it does. So it basically does the exact same thing as the first script, but there's a little more code here. And the first 2 lines are what you call a function definition. So in the first exercise, we called a function. We called the print function, which is built into Python. We didn't have to know anything about it except that it wants a string. So you're also going to want to create your own functions. That's where a lot of the power comes from in Python. And to define a function is very simple. You just use this keyword def, followed by your function name, followed by parentheses. Well, the parentheses would contain the arguments if you require any arguments. Main does not, so it's just empty parentheses. But you do have to put them there even if you're not asking for any arguments. And then the definition ends with a colon. Then the next line you'll see, this is what we wrote for the first script, just the print, we're calling the print function with hello world as the argument. You'll notice that it's indented, and indentation is actually a very important part of how Python understands your code. So the function, everything that's indented after the function call is part of the function. After the function definition. So a function is usually more than 1 line of code, and the way that it understands that is it looks at all the lines that are indented, equally as far. And the convention is to indent 4 spaces, but you can just hit tab and it'll take care of that for you. So that's and what you call that is it's a code block. This series of statements that have the same level of indentation. That's a code block. So that's our function definition. We've defined a function called main. Then these next 2 lines, this is another sort of basic building block of any script, which is an if statement. This is how the script makes decisions. So it's checking if something is true. It's checking if there's this variable called name is set to main, or main with underscores at either end. And right now it doesn't matter what that means or what it's checking, but all you need to know is that it's comparing 2 values to see if they're equal. And it is important though that you notice there's 2 equal signs, not a single equal sign. And that's how you check if 2 things are equal. And it's a very common mistake to use a single equals instead of 2. The single equal sign is used to assign values. So let's say you want to create a variable named x. You say x equals 4. That's assigning the value 4 to the variable x. That's when you would use a single equals. So we're checking if this variable equals main, and and again it ends with a colon, and if it does equal main, then it's going to go ahead into this code block, into the body of this if statement, and execute whatever lines of code it finds there. And we've got a single line, and that's another function call. It's calling the main function that we just defined right up here. And again, it includes a parentheses, but they're empty because there are no arguments. And that's it. And you might wonder why this is organized this way when the first example we did the same thing with a single line. This is the basic structure of any script in Python. And potentially you can write entire plugins, you can write really complex things that might be, have hundreds or thousands of lines of code. But no matter how big it is, everything starts at the main function. That's the starting point of every script. And so those are the conventions. And as you start to write stuff, you'll realize this is just kind of boilerplate that you put in there without even thinking about it. And we'll get into a little bit. I'll explain what this name equals main business means when we get a little bit further. So far we've just been, editing here, working in the editor, sending stuff to the console, and we're really not interacting with Cinema at all. In the next video, we're going to start doing that. I'm going to show you how to start talking to Cinema and introduce some of the functions that it gives you, and we'll go from there. So thanks for watching.